Welcome, Sainers. Welcome to Saints TV Weekly. As you might expect, I'm feeling a bit down in the dumps, Sainers, but we're going to pick ourselves up and we're going to go through the week that was at the St Kilda Football Club. So let's get into it. Okay, so before we get stuck into the weekend that was and the aftermath and what that means for the club and where that leaves us for the rest of the season, for at least the next week, let's talk about some positives. Now, the big one from last week was that Max King was selected in the AFLPA 22 under-22 squad. This is the second year in a row that he's been picked. There were some notable absentees from the team that did make it last year, and those two, Hunter Clark and Nick Caulfield, as well as Max King, they all made the team in 2020. The previous year was Jade Gresham, and then the year before that was Jade Gresham. 2017 was Jack Billings, and then before that was Tim Membry. So, I mean, the positive out of this is all of those players are still on our list, and for the most part, fairly important players in our team. Hunter Clark has been injured the last couple of weeks. Caulfield's been in and out of the team, but he got a chance on the weekend. I thought he was quite good. And Max King, there's not much else to say about Max King apart from he's going to be a future superstar of the competition. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but his first quarter on the weekend was exceptional, and that's what we've expected from him pretty much since the bye this year. The other positive news to come from the week was at the selection table. We didn't really expect it at least this week, but Dougal Howard was fit to play. So he was out last week with a hamstring injury, and from all reports, the club believed that it was going to be a 3-weeker, and that's pretty much the season. And I reported that, I think, a couple of weeks ago in Saints TV Weekly, that Dougal Howard is likely to miss the rest of the year, and that wasn't the case. He had gone for a couple of runs early last week and reported back to the club and said that he was feeling pretty good. They did some tests, he did some training, and then, he finds himself running out with the team to face a forward line with Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins. So that was the good news at the selection table. The other good news was that Dan Hannebery made his long-awaited return to AFL football. He'd been out for 309 days. His last game was the 2020 semi-final against Richmond, and he's been working his ass off. He's been playing for Sandy, he's been training, he's done everything he could have to get his body right, and he was put into the team with Dougal Howard to face Geelong on the weekend. So that was the good news. Now for some pretty
shitty news.
I could have put it kindly there, but I'm upset. It's Monday morning. Let's get into the analysis of the game. So, GMHBA Stadium, 4:35 p.m. Saturday afternoon. Playing probably my most hated team. My most hated venue. We needed to win to have any chance of making finals. Just to make it, to put pressure on other teams around us. Because if we had have won this game, and potentially next week against Fremantle, it would have meant that the Essendons and the Fremantles and these sort of teams, the West Coast, they would have had pressure to perform and to win. But, unfortunately, we couldn't get the job done. And this has been a tale of our season, Sainers. It's been a tale of our season, and we started the game on fire. My caption at quarter time on Facebook was scintillating Saints. Scintillating Saints. That first 20 minutes was a blitz. It was 5 goals, 1 to no score away from home. We are the first team since Fremantle, I think in 05 or 06, to kick the first 5 goals of the game against Geelong in Geelong. It's been that long. It's been over 14 years. So it's no mean feat. That is something that is very tricky to do. But what's even trickier to do is to go on with it and beat Geelong in Geelong. And last week, Geelong played GWS Friday night in Geelong. They lost. To play Geelong on the rebound is a tough ask. They don't drop too many games at home, and they definitely don't drop a couple in a row at home. It doesn't happen very often. So for us to be 5 goals, 1 up to 0 was the most perfect start. I was running up and down the stairs, telling the girlfriend, another goal to Max King, another goal to the Saints. 31-0. Can't believe this. This is amazing. But this little voice in my head was just like, they're Geelong, right? And we don't know how to hold leads, right? And I was thinking, yeah, but this could be different, right? This could be different. And the voice was just telling me, could be, but will it? And I was just this pessimism kicked in. I'm like, oh, they've kicked 1 goal, they've kicked 2. Quarter time, it was I think 31-12, and I was thinking, geez, we're only 19 points up, and we dominated them in that quarter. That is not good enough. We needed to go into quarter time with a good 4, 5, 6 goal lead to really justify the dominance of our play. But again, we gave away junk time goals. That was the issue. The amount of junk time, red time, whatever you want to call it time, we just give away goals when we shouldn't. In the last minute or two of every quarter, we give away goals. We did it before 3/4 time. We did it with a minute to go in the game, Jeremy Cameron, after a silly kick from Dougal Howard. And we did it, I think, at quarter time. Maybe even before halftime, we would have conceded a goal. Every quarter, we just let Geelong get that little bit of momentum going into the next break. And that really hurt us. And the game was just taken away from us in the second half. My review video covers off all those details, so I won't go into them now. This is just a weekly going through what's happened. But essentially, quarter time, we're 19 points up. The game is in our, the game's in our grasp. We're in control. We know the way we played in that first quarter worked. It made Geelong uneasy. But what Geelong do better than any other team in the competition is adjust and play to their strengths and play their game style and throw it back to you to counter that. And we couldn't. We couldn't counter their chip around. We couldn't counter the uncontested marks, the uncontested ball, the field dominance that they had. We could not stop that. And I think that's something that we'll talk about in the off-season, is that if we want to go to the next level next year, if we want to be a top 8 team, a top 6, top 4 team, hell, even a premiership chance, we need to have more strings to our bow. We need to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. And right now, we really only have one plan, and that is Saints footy, full throttle football, going all out and gassing yourself. And to be honest, we looked tired in the second half. I don't know if the first quarter was so grueling on the team that we really did bust our gut and found ourselves only 19 points up, and that wasn't enough. And Geelong just slowly overran us. Could be that. Could be that Geelong just chipped the ball around and you actually find yourself running more when you defend than when you attack. And that also would tire a team out. And we've always had question marks over how fit we've been. But from what I saw with the kilometres that we ran through the Telstra tracker on the AFL app, we ran more Ks than them, which makes sense because we were defending a lot more than them. But we had our chances, even late, to ice the game and to get back in front and to get the 4 points. But Geelong just found a way, and I'm labelling them our new bogey team. We don't know how to beat Geelong. We suck at trying to beat Geelong. Even when there's a chance to beat Geelong, like even earlier in the year, we couldn't kick straight. It's just Geelong get into our heads and make us play shit, make us make mistakes when it counts. And I mean, I don't like to blame, play the blame game and point fingers, but geez, that umpiring, that was shocking. But I'll leave it at that. We had our chances. We let Geelong dictate the game for basically 3 quarters after quarter time, and we probably needed to go into quarter time with a bigger buffer. And you wonder, we're 31 points up to 0. If we get the next goal and it's 37 to 0, was that the breaking point? Did it take just one more goal to break Geelong, and we couldn't do it? And instead, they get 2, they get 3, they kick 4 in a row after that, and they get back into the game. Was that the difference? If that's the difference between us missing finals and making finals, that is painful. But realistically, when you look at the way we've played all year, we probably don't deserve to play finals. And right now, we find ourselves in the position that we didn't want to find ourselves in, but we anticipated right after we lost to Adelaide before the bye. We just had that feeling that with the draw that we had, with the injuries that we had, and the inconsistencies that we have, that's where we'd find ourselves. And right now we find ourselves in that exact position. In terms of the ladder, I hate looking at it, but this is Saints TV Weekly, and we report on all these things. We're 12th at the moment. We're sitting on 9 wins, 12 losses, 88% percentage, 36 points, obviously, if you can do your maths right. And the annoying thing is, our percentage is lower than Carlton's. And Carlton are going to sack their coach. It's panic stations at Carlton. They've just lost by 95 points. Their percentage is still higher than ours. We could still finish lower than Carlton. We can't finish lower than 13th, but if we win next week, the highest we could possibly finish, say Richmond lose to Hawthorn, we win, we beat Fremantle, we could maybe go up, depending on how much we beat Fremantle by, possibly to 10th. And if West Coast lose by a lot, we could even go to 9th. But either way, it's going to be very tricky. Fremantle are actually playing for a spot in the 8, so it's going to be interesting to see how we approach the game. The fact that we can't make finals shouldn't change our approach. We still want to win. And if anything, I'd love to just ruin Fremantle's chances of making finals as well. So there's that incentive. Also, an opportunity to get games, get Bytel in, get Matty Allison in, even get Max Heath in. I don't care. Play these youngsters. Give them a go. Jack Loney, give him a farewell game because I feel like he's going to be on the trade table. Luke Dunstan, possible farewell game. There's players there that are playing for their careers, and there are players there that are going to play their last game, you know. And by that I mean there are players that can have one good game in this game against Fremantle, and that will just prolong their careers for that 1 year longer. But there are going to be players that run out with the team on the weekend, and their bags are packed already. It's done. They're gone. And I'm not going to name names right now. We'll talk about it in the off season and then when the trade news start breaking. But there are a couple of senior boys there that really need to look at themselves, and if they want to play for St Kilda next year, they're going to have to improve. But the issue is, when you're a mature player, you've been around for a long time, you've played a certain way for a long time, you're stuck in a certain way. So it's going to be tricky to see what they do, and I'm going to be very interested to see what we do. Now, for some other fun news, let's just have a sip first. Not really fun news, that was sarcasm, if people can't pick up on that. Another article came out during the week. The AFL and Tasmania are trying to organise something. Tassie want their own team, right? And the AFL basically said, well, you're not going to get your own team, but hey, you can have one of these Melburnian teams. And I love that the AFL's categorically come out and said that Gold Coast are no chance of being moved to Tassie. You know, the Gold Coast Suns are just they're just the youngest child. They're your favourites. You know, parents don't say it, but they give them their most allowance. They give them anything they want. The eldest and the teams that have been around the longest with the dedicated supporter bases that have paid their memberships, paid their fees for the last 100 years, they're the ones that the AFL are happy to ship across, you know. And classic AFL and Gil McLaughlin, who's a Saints fan, you know, he's basically thrown it and said, well, it's really up to North Melbourne, Hawthorn, and of course, St Kilda. And obviously all St Kilda fans have messaged me during the week and said, Jakey, we better not be going to Tassie, because if we are, I'm done with football. And I was thinking, if we move to Tassie, I'm moving to Tassie. There's no way I can give up St Kilda. No matter what I do, I will always be a St Kilda fan, but I can't imagine that we would move to Tassie. It only makes sense that North Melbourne or Hawthorn are the two to be considered. I really think Tassie deserve their own dedicated team. I think that's the smart option. Start from scratch. Give them the Tassie Devils Football Club or something like that. And don't try and dilute an already struggling supporter base when it comes to Melbourne, North Melbourne, St Kilda and Hawthorn, because those teams have been going through some ups and downs in the last couple of years. But if you look at our membership numbers, we are borderline right in the middle of all the clubs. And I read them out last week. We're on 56,000 now. The next best, I think, is 60, 70. And those are the Geelongs, the Port Adelaides, the big, you know, the successful clubs of the most recent years. So it doesn't make sense for us to go over there. We don't play over there enough. Hawthorn and North Melbourne, obviously, do they have a deal with Tassie, and they play 2 or 3 games there a season? They've played more there recently because of COVID, and they've got a big supporter base over there, but so do we. But I just think with the most recent games being played there, they've been Hawthorn and North Melbourne. It makes more sense to focus on them. I think for us, the AFL's invested a lot of money into us. We've moved back to Moorabbin. We're building the Danny Frawley Centre for mental health. And we've got a growing supporter base. And we're the one team out of the 3 that he's listed in this article that are a potential chance to make finals next year and to be successful. So there's no way we would be moving. And I don't think Tassie really want a Melbourne-based team anyway. They want their own team. So I hope they push back on it, and I hope all of these clubs push back on it, because that's just a cop-out. The fact that that Gil could just say, "Oh, just move St Kilda." Gil should know more than anyone that we're some of the most dedicated fans in the competition, the most passionate, the most emotional, and that's because we go through this shit. Look at the weekend. Look at the way I am right now. I'm a broken man. I need help. But that's just silly. We're not moving anywhere. I don't think we need to even worry about it. But it's just annoying that we're one of those clubs that just gets lumped into, relocate. They're crap. Relocate. They don't have supporters. We do. And for a team that's not made final to still have 56,000 members, and it's growing still, that's pretty exciting. So that's the news from the week. That's a bit of fluff. Everyone is hitting the panic button because of it, but I wouldn't. I think we should be fine. Now for some list management, injury news. This one's in regards to James Frawley. James Frawley has had some surgery, season-ending surgery recently, and he's weighing up his future. And I think St Kilda need to decide now what we do with our list, and one player that comes to mind is Frawley, and obviously someone like Sean McKernan as well, these mature players that we brought in, that we thought were just going to plug holes when we had injuries, and maybe allow the Dukes and these sort of players to take other forwards in the competition, and not necessarily the big gorillas of the comp. But Frawley hasn't played a lot of games. McKernan hasn't played a lot of games. We've seen Paul Hunter come in and try and play a bit in the ruck, and that hasn't really worked out. So I think, from my gut feel, I think James Frawley is probably going to hang up the boots, and if he plays on, it would just be for a 1-year contract and to be on very low money. But I think given that he's 33, he didn't play a lot of games, and the Saints faithful really want a young defender. They want us to draft someone. They want us to go and find someone. And if James Frawley hangs up the boots, there's news that there's Daniel Talia that's been circling around. He's from Adelaide, been delisted. He's a 2-time All-Australian. He's 29, turning 30. Could you see potential of Frawley retiring and then Talia coming in, but also allowing us to maybe draft a key back? And that means that you've got Dougal Howard, you've got Wilkie, and then you've got Talia, and then you've got this young brigade of maybe Highmore, Caulfield, and a young key back, a young fullback that could be trained up and could learn from the experience of some of these older heads in the team. So I could see that as being a focus in the off-season. I think we need to go to the draft. We need to use our first pick, whether it's pick 7, pick 8, pick 6. It's going to be around that mark. Remains to be seen, but it's going to be a big off-season. I thought last year was going to be a big off-season, but this is going to be a big off-season. In terms of other injuries, the downside to the weekend was that Max King it looks like he's, re-aggravated his adductor. And Brett Ratton mentioned in his press conference that it's looking likely that Max will be rested for the Fremantle game, so we won't see Max. And I'm a bit upset about that, because I thought, well, the one way to end the year is just to get a win, first of all, but also just to see Max King kick 10. He's kicked 6, but you just feel like he's got a bigger bag in him because of his form. And his first quarter on the weekend, he's had 5 marks, 5 kicks, 2 goals, 1, I think. He took about 3 contested marks. He looked $1 million. He looked incredible. And he goes off, and Geelong kicked 3 goals in that time that he wasn't on the ground. That was really the turning point in the game. Similar to last time when Marshall went off the ground, that was the turning point. King going off the ground was the turning point. And that leaves us to where we are at the moment. It's going to be it's going to be tricky just watching the boys play on the weekend and knowing that finals is out of the question. I mean, some people tell me that it's not. If we win by 60 goals or something and Richmond lose, West Coast lose, Essendon lose, there's still a chance we can make the 8. But let's just be real. We try to be real on this show, and not really. I'm a bit biased, but it is what it is. There's always next year, and I hate saying that saying. But if you don't say it, you'll lose your mind. So on that note, that's Saints TV Weekly. That is it. VFL was postponed again, so no news on that part. AFLW, again, quiet week on the track there, but that'll ramp up because the season's not too far away, so we'll get going on that. And in terms of the Sainers, we'll look to bounce back against Fremantle, and that time is still TBC. I believe it's looking like a Sunday twilight because, it's not one of the games that really decides finals, and I think the top 4 all play each other this weekend, so those are going to take the primetime slots. And for us, it's just going to be the shitty Sunday, most likely, at Marvel. So we'll be back next week, hopefully to talk about a win and hopefully to dissect a more positive week on the track. But that is the week. There's going to be good weeks. There's going to be bad weeks. And right now, this week is looking like a pretty average week. But nonetheless, guys, I hope you all have a great week and you join me next week on another Saints TV Weekly. Cheers, guys, and go you mighty Sainers. Thanks, guys.